All right, feel free to get started.
Okay, so I can start it now, right? Hi, and welcome to tonight's opening panel of Bound International Virtual Performance Festival, originally from China, making of a new theater maker identity. My name is Tianjin He. I'm the artistic director of Bound Festival, and it's my pleasure to be in conversation with 4 theater makers that are not only my friends, but truly people I admire and look up to in this industry. I would like to tell you a little bit more about Bound. So the premises of our work and why we are gathering today to open up the whole festival virtually this year. Bound has been a virtual stage of new and bold reimaginations of pandemic time theater around the world. And this year we have commissioned 8 Chinese artists living in different parts of the world to create a new monodrama and to manifest our what our individual voices are like on the backdrop of the pandemic times and stop Asian hate. And rooting that in the American theater landscape, there is a small group of us out there with bios that start with originally from China. Some of us find it unique and some may find it leads to some undesired stereotypes. But most of the time we rush to connect and hold hands with each other to celebrate what this identity has brought to our artistic career. What does originally from China hold for the lives of generations of theater makers? How did we find ourselves in the unique set of challenges, conversations, and ultimately liberated out as artists under such identity? This is a conversation that we have never had before, and definitely not the last we will have. So I really want to warmly welcome all the artists we have invited. So Chongren Fan, he is the artistic director of Yangtze Repertory Theater of America and also a very talented independent theater director. And Xiaran, Ran Xia. So Xiaran is a playwright, director, and artistic director of the Arctic Group. And Minhao, Minhao is a playwright and also working on different projects now, especially commissioned by Pipeline Play Lab. And Xiaoyue Zhang. Xiaoyue is the producer of the Archer project, and I will be the moderator tonight. So firstly, I really want everyone to give our audience a brief introduction of yourself, like who you are, where are you originally from, and what kinds of creative practices have you been working on? Like on my screen, Ran is the first. Do you want to start?
Sure. Hi, my name is Xiaran. I'm originally from Shanghai, China. I am a playwright, director, and sound designer. I work independently, but I'm a resident director at the Tank. And I work with Exquisite Corpse Company, which is a interdisciplinary theater company that's based in Brooklyn quite a lot as well. That's it. That's all I gotta say, right? All right.
Yes. And I know Chongren is also from Shanghai. So do you want to take on it?
Sure. Hi, I'm Chongren. I'm also originally from Shanghai. I started doing theater in college, really, and mostly musical at the very beginning in China. And then after I moved to the United States, my work has been focusing on new works for as a lot of us do in New York. And currently I'm the artistic director of Yangtze Repertory Theater, and I'm also a resident artist and producing associate at Pan Asian Repertory Theater.
Great. And maybe Xiaoyue.
Hi, I'm Xiaoyue. I am from Yunnan and Guangzhou, China. I am a creative producer, production manager, and also director, performer. I am a theater hybridity, and originally started working in dance theater, and right now I also work independently in interdisciplinary performance, and outside of my independent work, I am an associate producer at the Orchard Project based in New York.
So Sharia now like currently is in the West Coast, right? In LA.
Yes, I'm in LA, Echo Park, LA.
Yeah. And Ming Hao.
Oh, hi. Hi, I'm Ming Hao too, and I'm originally from Wuhan, China, and I'm a playwright, and I make plays. Yeah, and I just collaborated with Chongren on like a short YouTube play that's commissioned by his company, and it's gonna be like a loose adaptation of from like a story from Liao Zhai.
Yes, I also like very glad I'm kind of part of the process of their incubation. So I think we can talk about it later because I think it's a really important project and we can discuss about it. Yeah. So I'm actually really curious, like how did you find your interest in theater and how did you land in American theater? Yeah, does anyone have a strong interest to answering about that? Because I think maybe not all of us like were majored in theater in college, but it doesn't really matter. Like, yeah.
I have one of those experience like how we Chinese people say 半路出家, which means you change career, you ditched your money-making future to do arts, because I studied psychology and I went to grad school for communications and media studies for years. And then right after graduating from grad school, I wrote a play, decided to go into theater full time, and then here we are. But I think I initially got my interest in theater probably when I was even just in primary school and middle school. I remember reading the very first dramatic text, and it was Timon of Athens, Chinese translation. It was weird. It's a weird introduction to Shakespeare. And then after that, I just started getting that taste of consuming dramatic arts, having my parents buy me all of the plays. So, but I never thought I was actually gonna make a career out of it. But really glad we're here today.
Yeah, kind of just want to continue because there are so many people, Chinese artists, they may not finally or like currently land or stay in America. And I'm wondering like how do you want to stay here in America to be a theater maker?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
I'm going for the long haul struggle of renewing my old visa once every 3 years, which I'm just starting to do that and spend every last penny of my income on my legal fees.
Yeah. Yeah, that is like a very primary struggle for mostly all the artists from China and also other countries. Yeah. So what about the rest of you three? How do you like land in theater and started to do theater? Maybe Chongren, you introduced a little bit about it before.
I can go. I did not come from like any kind of like art background. Like I remember when I was like 8 years old or 10 years old, there was a TV show in China called 东方英雄好少年, and it was like reenacting the old tales from how to be a good kid or something. And I remember my parents really my parents are pretty liberal, and they wanted me to to audition for that show. And I remember I was crying so hard, and I was there was a table in our living room, and I was literally underneath the table, and I was holding the leg, and I refused. So that didn't go well. And then for the rest of the middle school, high school, college, I really loved singing. So I always enter any kind of singing competition here and there, but that was about it. And I don't think I had a very clear path as what I wanted to do. So I just went along with whatever was happening to me. And freshman in college, I remember I felt very lost. I went to Shanghai International Studies University, and I was majoring in English literature, and I just felt lost because the whole a lot of the Chinese kids, your whole life was to study hard and to go to a good university, and then that was the only thing. I feel at least my generation, I don't know what's going on with the millennials, but that was about it. That was the end of the whole life planning. And then in college, of course, there were a lot of self-awareness of who I am, what I want, and I just met this group of amazing people. None of them came came from a long a theater background as well. So we just started somehow we all loved singing, and so we started doing musicals. We did my first musical on campus was Rent, and then later on as after the first I would say 16 months of my life, I took over the musical theater club on campus, and I acted and I directed in the first, I would say the first public performed version of Spring Awakening in China. That was very early. It was 2010. That was the first performance. And then suddenly I realized, shit, I had not interned anywhere. A lot of my friends were interning with those Fortune 500 companies, and they were preparing themselves for going to the career, or becoming an adult. And I just felt I still felt like a kid, but I was so happy. That's when I decided to look for grad school, and particularly because back then my only interest was in musical. So even these days, Chinese musical or Asian musicals are not the industry itself is not as well put together. There are a lot of infrastructure problems. There are a lot of ways from the production to the creative process. There are a lot of issues, and it's going to take generations to change. So I told my folks, I said, if I ever got enrolled in a program, and I would just I would pick this as my career, and I would focus on this only. And if I didn't get enrolled in any program, then I would give up this crazy idea and become a quote unquote normal person. But then my grad school actually gave me, and my mentor was looking for somebody more like a piece of blank paper rather than somebody who's who's had a lot of experience. And I was very lucky to come here in the end. And well, then the career struggle and all of that, that's a long story. And almost 10 years later, I'm still here and I'm still creating works, and I've been meeting a lot of amazing people, and I'm very grateful.
Thank you for sharing so much memorable experience with us. Yeah, and I know Xiaoyu and Minghao both went to school in the West Coast. So maybe your experience is different from like where people go to East Coast schools. So yeah, would you like to share some stories and how did you find yourself in theater, in American theater specifically? Yeah.
Yeah, I can start. Yeah, definitely. I was not planning to come to West Coast for theater. Actually, all other schools I applied was in New York or East Coast, but then landed at CalArts was a life surprise. So I felt theater not strictly theater of play or like language driven performance, but theater in general, like being in the physical theater, has just been around all my life. I studied traditional dance, traditional Chinese dance, and ethnic dance since I was 4. So like performance and being in around performance area, and also in a way producing performance without knowing that was actually producing. So that has always been happening. And I actually studied filmmaking for my undergrad, but parallel to that, I started having a very close, intimate relationship with a dance studio in Guangzhou called Argyle Dance Performance Group. So I felt in parallel to my study in undergrad, contemporary dance and also other performance language for me was opening up a way of body liberation and also just like a human liberation I've never encountered before. And that just drew me very strongly. And really also my parents, I was very fortunate that my parents weren't trying to put a lot of career pressure on me, but allowed me to explore step by step. They always had blind trust in me of figuring out what I want to do with my life. So I started working with the dance theater in also a very hybrid capacity. And I happened to had a touring coordinator job with a company in Shanghai. So that job, straight out of college, gave me an experience to encounter like major theaters in 19 cities in China. So like Baoli Theater and all, I would say the equivalent of regional theaters that exist in China. And also just encountered like how theater system operate, how the infrastructure, I think, and the infrastructure and the system of theater as a forming industry in China. And I saw so many exciting things, and also had a lot of question of, because I was a touring production, so at the same time I was learning about how theater operates in foreign cultures and foreign countries. So by experiencing that clash, sometimes collaboration and sometimes clash, made me feel I do want to know more about how this world is built inside out of the theater. So I had 2 choices if I wanted to apply for a more making programs, so like directing or performance, or producing a management program. And at that moment, just like I felt the tour gave me such a strong impact, and I felt this is a place that I want to start. So I was looking at our program, and actually came here to visit all the schools that I applied, and I just immediately had a very strong connection with my mentor then at CalArts. So like also CalArts is supposed to be a place where, because we do all school training, and it did give me a lot of freedom to explore and participate and involved in theater making all around, so not just my program solely. So that at that time felt like a great way of studying, the way almost was like an apprenticeship So I came here, and yeah, very fortunate to have experience within my program, production management and producing, but then also got to be involved in projects as a dramaturg, as and found my community of collaborators, and we've been still doing collaborative project independently.
Great. And so Minhao, like, yeah, how did you get into theater? But I know you are a theater major, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think similar to quite a few others here. I think it was still like quite by chance that I did not go to college. I mean, I went to college in California, at UCSD, and I like when I applied, I wasn't a theater major. I mean, and college was a very trying time for me. I mean, and for many others, but for me, definitely. And so I think I was quite lost, and I was kind of alone in another, in like not my home country. And then I was really just trying to figure out what I want to do. And then I switched my major multiple times. And so yeah, so it was, I mean, I think looking back, it may not be a bad experience to like really try out a lot of things, but at the time it was certainly like hard. And so I think it was like totally by chance that like one of the beginning, like at the beginning of a semester, I basically went into the wrong classroom and then didn't realize I was in the wrong room for a long time. And that's pretty much how I stumbled upon like a modern drama history class. And it was like a very scholarly class about like the theater history of the 20th century. And yeah, and I thought, oh, that's actually pretty cool. And I don't know what else I want to do or I can do. So I thought I would try this. I would try this class. And yeah, and after that, I like tried a playwriting class. And it was, I guess in a lot of like, it's a way for me to like, that kind of self expression was, I couldn't do like anywhere else. And so I think that's how it started.
Thank you, like everyone, for sharing so much details about your life, because I think it's very meaningful to be present and to be known like a very specific person, very different artist. Yeah, so we have already, I think it's very interesting that I observed like all of us, because I am also a director and I was not majored in theater before as well. So kind of share a lot of similarities with all that you have said. So, and the first thing I saw is like, we all have very supportive family. So yeah, I think that's a very good thing, because I can imagine in a lot of stereotypes, like Chinese parents and families mostly will have a very strong pressure on their kids. But yes, we are still like making arts and be supported by our families. I think that's something we have really appreciated, and we also like want people to know, like I will want people to know that I'm really thankful to my family to support me to do arts. And another thing is we have talked about, we have so many experience in China, which I think in a way to influence us to get into theater and land in the American theater. I have like a question it's what's your relationship between you and China and the Chinese theater industry now? Because I think different people will have totally different ideas about it. And also like what to expect in the future. Do you want to just do more concentrated more theater you make in America, or you also have some expectation to do something globally or intercontinentally? Yeah. Does anyone want to start? Maybe, yeah, Xiaoyue.
I feel that's such a great question because I'm sure almost all of us sitting here have encountered that question. I actually was just talking to several of my friends this entire week about our choices. I think for me, it's very unique that I think from the beginning I really wanted to pursue a hybridity of culture and experience. And for me, having a life in theater or my life with theater in a fluid way, which means I can always experience from culture to another, is my ideal way of making work. But at the same time, I think throughout these years being in US, I've also had a very profound experience of recountering my own culture and my roots, my relationship with homeland, while it's a distant relationship, has brought me new intimacy with my past. So I think I encountered this idea of transcultural theater while reading a play, reading an analysis of a Chinese, French Chinese playwright, and this idea gave me a lot of inspiration. Of we're always going to be in mobility, like right now comparing to 50 years ago. We've already absorbed, like our generation. I grew up being heavily influenced by Western culture, and actually my relationship to theater was also mainly influenced by Western style of theater and contemporary dance, which was not originally from China. So I think there's cultural, there's also form, there's all these content and philosophy, lifestyle, all kinds of hybrid mode of being that has one is always informing another. I don't know if that actually answers the question, but for me, it's not about physically where I'm gonna be, but I think my Chinese upbringing and the root will always inform my experience, whether I'm in China or outside of China, whether I'm in US, and also my experience here would always inform my future experience, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Xiaoyue. I think that's a very, very good point. Like, because physically being in one place or another is like, it's totally different from what we read in the history or what is before the internet and also the globalization. But I mean, maybe we don't know what will happen next, because I feel the globalization situation is changing too. Yeah, so, but I thank you for your sharing of ideas. And I think that's a good start about what kind of intercultural kind of work we have done, or some work, because I have researched all of your author of your plays and works you have done before, like what Minhao said. Chongren and Minhao have done a YouTube series is based on Liao Zhai, the very classic Chinese stories. And actually, I think Xiaoyue also did a project based on Liao Zhai before. And I also saw like Ran, you did a Tao play. And I imagine there might be some, because I saw Chinese characters and also Chinese concept in it. So I think they're all very interesting. So does anyone would like to share? And we may just have a discussion about how we did it and how we are inspired by what we learned and what we have this kind of intercultural identity. So first of all, I kind of want to share my screen with you guys because I really want to show the Liao Zhai project with all of you and all the audience. Let me do it. So, because I think it's a very interesting and intriguing play, a whole series. And I even really love the design of the posters and everything, because I can taste a very traditional Chinese, but also like a modernized of it, a very young spirit of all this. So this episodes all written by Asian playwrights and performed by Asian actors, actresses. Yeah, and Chongren, if you want to talk, like I'll just show my screen and you can just start to talk, or Minhao, yeah.
Maybe I will just chat a little bit. So like, I think it's tying actually back to what Xiaoyue was saying, like, the more I think about like, or like, tending the question about like, where do you want to work? Like, do you want to working like, back home, or do you want to keep working here? I've had a variety of different experiences working both in China for Chinese companies in the United States, as well as for like Asian American companies, as well as for like the predominantly white institutes. And I would say like at this point of my life, my main focus is really on, because I'm also tied, like I'm like, have very strong bond with the two organizations I'm working with. So like, my main focus currently is in my work in the United States. The intercultural element of making theater is, well, like, if any one of you can solve this problem, I would say go for it. But I just think it's, at least like, my brain room is not big enough to figure out how to solve that. I actually think it's not a solvable problem to like, make really the cross-cultural work, like, have that much of an impact. Largely it comes down to who's your audience, right? You write, of course, like, when we create works, like, we come from, it comes from who we are, like, what, like Minhao said, like, the theater is in a way of express yourselves. And, but like in the end, isn't that like the saying, like, if a tree falls in the forest, but no one's around, like, does it make a sound? You want people to see it. You want people to know about it. And that way, like, you're not just standing on the street and yelling and then like nobody knows what you're talking about. So that really makes me think more and more about, particularly from like an artistic director point of view, like what we are doing here. In 2019, we did a very successful play. It was written by Yilong Liu. June is the first fall. That play, to me, it was like, it was such a great breaking point for both, my producing partner Sally and I, and for the company. We figure out, like, we want to see the world. We want to produce plays to see the world through a contemporary Chinese lens. But what does that mean? We're still on a journey to figure it out. So when the pandemic hit, of course, all the live theater productions got shut down, and we were actually doing a bilingual play. It was based on Salzman, the desk of a salesman, and it was postponed. And now, like, we're looking at to do it next year. And then, like, we were like everyone I know, like, and particularly if you're still in the States, we've been going through a very difficult time, both like, physically and mentally. So like, I was haunted by a lot of the crazy, weird dreams. And immediately I started thinking about, like, those nights when I was young, I was sharing a bedroom with my grandfather, and he used to read Liao Zhai to me like every night. It was so inappropriate since I was a little kid, but somehow it imprinted this kind of, like, you go using a storytelling to express, there's like a part of you that you cannot really express directly to the public. And so, like, I had this crazy idea, started like chatting with people, and suddenly I realized a lot of people actually share that similar feeling of not only, like, about the pandemic, of our struggle, but as well as, like, a lot of the, I think most of the writers were so excited because they were, they wanted to write something about it. Then it comes to, like, how to write it. I do not want to, write, because, like, in our audience, like majority of the audience like are English speakers here. And like, I don't want to, and also if we are not doing it in Chinese, there's no way for us to actually create, like, like a more literal adaptation of Liao Zhai into, like, any kind of format. So the more I think about it, the more I realize we need to reflect, because, like, there are a group of us here, and the immigrants, the first generation immigrant artists here, and then there are a lot of the struggles personally, or like what they are experiencing, or like, or what they're seeing their friends are going through. That is more interested, to me. So, like, we ask the writers to use the text in the novel as a jumping, like, to jump off, like, and to start thinking about, like, what they can make. But we want them to set it in contemporary, modern America setting, and reflect what they are going through personally into the piece. And I think, like, everybody did a wonderful job, and all 5 episodes will go live on demand from next Wednesday, and then it's free for all. And so, like, just like go to yangtzerap.org, and you can register today, and you can start watching them next Wednesday. And also, like, everyone is overwhelmed with online content right now. All these pieces are about 20 minutes each episode. So, like, you can watch, once, like, one episode a day, and if you like. And I think, like, that's because that's the like, attention span I have these days. I cannot sit in front of my computer to watch, like, an hour show. So I hope, like, you will enjoy it, and we hopefully we can have more discussions about, this in the future.
Yes, I'm also, like, cannot wait to watch it, because I know the incubation process, and I think the play is one of the best I've seen, because I'm curating this online festival for 2 years, and I have to be honest, there are not a lot of very good play online. They may put their hearts in it, but the output may not be very, very good. But I believe, like, the Liao Zhai series, the Clubhouse, I'm really looking forward to it. And from a writer's perspective, I kind of want to ask Ming how did you manage the bilingual writing in your play? You can maybe talk about it within the Clubhouse series.
I think for me, like, writing, a lot of it is, I mean, for me, is about, like, to really about, like, patterns and habits, and really to like we talk about culture, and then East versus West, or like China versus the US. And I think those are like super urgent, like important topics. But for me, I also feel like even just the word culture, of course, is no like a definite like a definition of the word. And for me, a lot of it comes down to like basically your behavioral pattern. And each of us, we come from different regions in China, and to like sometimes the cultural differences can be huge too. And each family, each like, I feel like how I was raised, like all the my parents, and those are all my culture, and they're very different. And for me, those eventually shows up as like my behavioral patterns and habits. And so I think that's what I always like to investigate, like just knowing my own, learning about my own patterns and breaking my own patterns. And I think in that sense, like bilingual, like to me is a great way to develop a sense of like self-awareness, like the non-attachment, non-attachment, and like defamiliarize yourself from your like your old patterns, and like you don't need to like break away from everything. But I feel it's a joy, and for me to like really learn about my own patterns and why I think certain ways. And I really agree with what Xiaoyu said about developing like a new intimacy with China after you've been in the US. I think it's, for me, that totally happened. I think for me, I feel like having that distance and like it really helps me to have more perspectives on China. I think when I was in high school in China, like how I looked at China was very, very different from how I looked at it right now. I think it's, I think now I probably in some way look at it with more different perspectives and somewhere closer to objectivity, if that exists. But I feel like I definitely feel very different about China, about Chinese culture, about my upbringing now, because of the distance I have, the non-attachment. That really helped me. Yeah.
I've read Min Hao's play, and I'm always like very in touch with it, because in some way I think it's interesting. Even Min Hao is writing in English, but I can feel like a kind of freehand brushwork of Chinese classical painting, like called 写意 in China, in his English plays. So it's similar to what we have seen of the Liao Zhai posters, that kind of brush strokes, and I can feel that in Min Hao's play. So and I'm really interested. So I think it's very interesting that you find a different freedom and a different perspective as a bilingual writer. And also I know, like Xiaoyuan, you also write a lot of things. Is you read plays and also critic reviews. What about your experience being a bilingual writer?
Sure. I predominantly write dramatic works in English, actually, because I entered the theater world after coming here to the United States, and then made my communities and colleagues within the English-speaking world first. So, but just to kind of add on the intercultural topic, I think I'm a pathologically optimistic person, and I really have a lot of hope in creating works that bridge different cultures. And I'm actually really glad that you brought up Tao earlier, because I forgot about it. And then I remembered that I did that. So Tao in Chinese means peach. And a lot of the Chinese language that I'm interested in has to do with homophones and homonyms. And when we did Dark Fest at the Tank Theater a couple years ago, the idea was to create pieces that does not use electricity. So my collaborator Florence and myself decided to create something that utilized both of our interests and mythologies across different cultures. So I brought up the legend of the land of the peach blossom spring, which is 桃花源记 by the Chinese author Tao Yuanming. He's ancient. I don't remember what time he was from. That's the one. So Tao is the surname of the author. It also means peach. It also means to escape. So depending on how the character is written, they're all pronounced the same way. And we started talking about how in every single culture, there exists a place where people's mind would travel to when they are trying to escape a reality that's a little bit too much to suffer. So there is 桃花源记 in Chinese legend, there is Avalon in the Irish culture, and a bunch of other types of fantasy land in every single culture. So I think if we as a human could share that hopes and dreams, and on the other hand, I think in more recent years, I've been sneaking a lot of Chinese mythologies into my work. Most recently, a play that I've developed with Pipeline Theater Company in the Play Lab class of 2019 through 2020. One part of the story is based on the legend of the white snake, so 白蛇传 in Chinese. And I think I've become more confident in not trying to explain why I'm including certain legends, because I think in the Western culture, if you are writing about Greek mythology, or if you're writing about, Western culture and myths in a piece of pop culture work or a piece of dramatic work, nobody really questions you where it's from. And if people want to know more about it, they can just Google it or look it up. And as a Chinese person, I feel like we've always felt the need to justify the use of our own myths and our own culture. And I think it's a part of lineage. It's a part of my lineage that I think I don't have to make excuses to include in my work. So if a bunch of the characters in the Western literature canon can be inspired by Thor and Loki, we can also include characters that are based on Bai Su Zhen, or, a lot of those, or Guan Yin, lots of those deities in Asian culture, because Asian people and Asian American people, there are lots of us. So I think there could be a greater representation that could represent the reality in the pop culture. I'm babbling on a lot, so please stop me.
No, you're not. You really made a point. I'm quite inspired by what you just said, and also the work you have done, no matter it's the wax snake one or the Tao. I think after you describe it, because I only saw this poster on your website, but I think I really get a lot of more cultural elements and also the idea based on intercultural identities from it. So if you are doing something like that in the future, please let us know. Yeah, and Xiaoyue, I also saw you have done the Liaojia project, and also is in a fringe festival. I can share some images on your website, and you can also talk about it, because I think it will be a very fascinating discussion. Different people and artists doing the similar adaptation of the same story series.
Sure. So Liaojia, I can talk about Liaojia a little bit. I can also talk about, because I feel some of my work later on could be maybe a nice, interesting in addition to what everybody just shared. Very briefly, Liaojia was a collaboration with a group of artists from UCLA and USC, directed and adapted by my friend Lu Changting, also from CalArts, also a theater producer and director. It was a process where it was a device of theater, and it was where this group started to collectively think what sparked the inspiration for Pu Songling to write these ghost, yao, guai, and mystical figures, and what in relation to a lot of Chinese artists and writers, in relation to their political status and their relationship to writing and creating work, and what are the feelings of being trapped and being like also the power of these creatures that are human-like, but they're not, the transforming potential of ghost metamorphosis. So it was a process where it was very interesting for me. Was the first time that we did a play about Chinese culture, especially ancient culture, in English, and where we're talking about how to make the language accessible, how to make these characters, the origin of these characters accessible to American audience. But I remember the feedback from some of the audience after the show was like everything was so like there's a layer of understanding. There's no need to understand 100% of everything. That's also, I think, it's a beauty of transcultural or intercultural work. That is, it draws on something more in common human consciousness, that you don't have to understand exactly every word's what it's referring to. But I think for me personally, in bringing Chinese culture root into my own work, I think it's just something I cannot escape so far, going back to the distant new intimacy with my culture, with Chinese root. I think there's a lot of relearning about what shaped me and what shaped my environment growing up. So where do I start? Because I have so much information in my brain. I don't know which one to pick. But so I did last November, I did a work called Little Red Book Dash or Plural Body, part of the Red Cat New Original Work Festival. And that was a show about Chinese bodies movement. So how does the Chinese body move, and what did we learn? Like, what did our generation learn growing up? What are the very mechanical, repetitive body training that we went through, and how does that in a way shape our identity individually and also in relation to collective identity? I think that started from like that project was sparked from my sharing a little bit nerdy information of what I was doing at school. So it was coming from a research project about Chinese performance vocabulary since the 1950s, since the 50s. And so around each decades, some of those new movement language that were being either engineered or being promoted or being like put on like the spotlight dominant performance position, like the during the 60s and 70s, the model revolutionary model opera 样板戏, and then also from the 50s, as I learned that Chinese, what we consider as Chinese classical dance 古典舞, and then ethnic dance 民族舞, were actually contemporary product during that time. So starting from the 50s. And then also 太极, I thought like the 28式 28th paradigm 太极 that I always thought was the original traditional form of Taiji was also a contemporary product, like a simplified ways to make it more accessible and common for people to practice. And then, also the gymnastics that we're all familiar with, eye massage, and then school, military training, 军训, and all that. And just think about how these body exercise and the way of how a body move were really a new, like, waves and waves of new invention and new creation that heavily formed our growing up, how heavily like constitute of what right now we can see how Chinese bodies move. And so and also just knowing their relationship to the macro conversation of Chinese contemporary political identity, and then also knowing that a lot of like Chinese model opera, a revolutionary model opera, and Chinese dance, classical dance, ethnic dance, part of the intention of inventing these new ways of movement has something to do with the exploration of national identity. So like what movement can represent the new identity of China, which is like a fascinating process of knowing that, and that just rewired my brain in that research process. And so the work that I was doing last year was about making connection to these movement vocabularies and individually, and unpacking me and other performers, us as a collective, our individual journey, relearning, reaccessing the childhood memory of learning dances and going through military training and going through gymnastics every morning in high school. And how does that, I feel like that was a work where we worked very directly with those symbols, with the symbolistic elements of Chinese identity for us and also for other culture that constitute the stereotype of Chinese bodies. We dissect that and just trying to find the physical connection of set aside those ideological judgment, but then like what is it really doing to us? How was I repeating the same movement every morning at 10 a.m. for 3 years? What did that do to me? What my body learned, and what did it want me to learn? And then now I thought I forgot about that, but no, like none of us forgot about that muscle memory and somatic experience. So then now how do we allow ourselves to have another dialogue with it? And just sharing like an anecdote. One day, because we're during COVID, we were going through individual rehearsal. So there was a filming session at the end where we were creating a green screen figure of someone doing the high school gymnastic with a headless figure. That also was part of it was coming from borrowing Chinese mythical inspiration. So we're filming that. And then as we're chatting, as I was chatting with my friends, with my people who were helping with the filming, and then the music just started, like 第二套全国中学生广播体操, and that just started, and then everyone just automatically started to do the gymnastic without saying like, hey, we should start. It was just a bizarre experience, and that was that was something also blabbering about that process.
I just want to say I totally feel you, because I'm also like a creator of physical theater and dance theater, and I've done a device piece with another Chinese female artist based in New York, and we put part of the gymnastic practices into the devising piece. When I didn't realize when I hear the sound of it, and I just remember every single movement and gesture of it. It was so long ago, like tens decades of my life before. So I've never think about it, because there was another girl who's from Taiwan, and she just don't know anything about it. So it's kind of like a brand new thing to her. But for me, like I can, another Chinese actor, and we were like, oh, we can do this. I think it's like we learn how to ride a bicycle, and we can do that forever, and it's just in our muscle memories. I'm just really glad all of you share so different perspectives of the works you have done, because some are more on the language based and spoken language based, and being a bilingual writers, and some of them are more on the physicality and somatic part. But I do feel all of you, like all the things you have shared, the Chinese identity, like the memories of us, represent a lot of things of our own culture. No matter what, like we cannot really define what is Chinese identity, because the history of it, or the contemporary of what is Chinese identity now, like no one can really say what it is. But I really feel it's all rooted in your work and rooted in your creativity, the ideas to create all of these works. And let's move on to another topic, because I'm also really interested in how I think all of you have directed some shows, and as a person from China or another country not in US, I myself have been experienced some brand new things or some unexpected encounters in rehearsal room. So as a director, when you directing in a rehearsal room, what were your challenges in the rehearsal room when you were directing a show? Yeah, if you have kind of like a story or memories, maybe it's in an early time, there must be some kind of cultural shock in it. Yeah, if you would like to share with us about it. So maybe you guys can have a little more time to think about it. Like maybe I'll start a little bit about my experience. Sometimes when I just started to work in a environment like this, like the words we use in theater is very different from the words we use back in China. So and my friends who was a theater major in an American college, she just didn't know anything I was talking about in Chinese. It's the same, like spiking and loading, load out, like all this stage left, stage right. It's something like the first thing I realized there's such a big difference between theaters in different countries, especially like I think Britain also have different vocabulary in theater. Yeah, but It's just a very tiny anecdote of my experience. If it recall your memory of something you experienced before.
I can say something like, it's actually like weirdly it's in reverse because I didn't learn the terminology in China ever. And so like in 2016, I was invited to direct a play for Shanghai Dramatic Arts Center. And during the rehearsal process, I couldn't find words to say to the actors because I just did not know how to say like heightened moment. I did not know how to say like, do this, do that. And it was quite challenging. And some of the staff thought I was being pretentious, but I was like, I literally do not know the word. Can you tell me what, I can describe what it is. But like, in terms of the challenging moments of directing in United States is like, after, you work production for a while, you'll understand there, like, the variety of the different union rules you have to like, follow. You cannot just do a lot of, as a producer, like I deal with union on a daily basis. So like, there are like a lot of rules. And then secondly, I would say not quite Asian actors, but a lot of Caucasian actors, particularly the ones who are a little bit more accomplished, they are very fragile. You have to be very careful in terms of how, like, if you want to communicate effectively, you have to understand, like, I'm talking about as a director, like, and also that's me personally. I never want to hurt people's feeling. As a result, I have to learn a lot about who they are and then what kind of culture they come from. I mean, sadly, like, it didn't grow up in this country, so like those were a lot of the, like, there were so many moments that I had to learn on the fly, and then realize, it was, words could hurt people. At the same time, like, how to effectively communicate what you want is very important to me.
Yeah, I totally feel that, like, the vocabulary and also the way of being a director in Chinese theater and here is totally different, I feel. Yeah, like how, because I think in my understanding in China, most of the theater institutions still have the director-centered system. So everyone is following the guide of the director and may not really have a chance to speak about themselves. Yeah, but here, like, it's a big surprise to me too, like how we have to find a way to talk to everyone, not only because of the language, but I think language is still like very important, but also like how we can really let the actors know what we really want. Yeah, sometimes I also feel the difficulty in it. Yeah, what about the rest of you guys? Do you have any experience in it? Yeah.
Similar to Chongren, I also did not, well, I didn't do any theater directing or playwriting or theater anything really in mainland China. So I don't know any vocabularies in theater that's in Mandarin. And in recent years, I'm actually meeting and making friends with more Chinese theater makers. And when we are having conversations about productions in Chinese, a lot of the times I have no idea what you're talking about. So I have to actually learn on the fly, and just by translating through the meanings of the words and figure out what does, what do you say when you're trying to say stage manager in Chinese? And then I think the cultural shock that I encountered in directing in America comes more from going into the culture of theater making from a more academic world. because I'm very dramaturgically driven and research heavy as a person as well as an artist. So I actually didn't experience much of the desire or need to, well, I also didn't know what you're supposed to behave as a director. And going into directing as a baby artist, I thought I was the worst person in the room. So I was trying to like listen to everybody and talk to everybody with their language. And I remember the very first directing course I took was Daniel Talbot's site-specific directing workshop back in 2015, summer of 2015, I think. And I remember one of the best advice. I think I got two pieces of advice from that class. One is, as a director, you have to become a translator and you have to speak 100,000 different languages. And I think I have an advantage as a foreigner who spoke a different language to begin with and had that willingness innately to understand everybody and try even harder, because there is this assumption that I didn't quite understand them because I spoke a different language. And then the second one is give it all and move on. So I feel like that really helped with my mental health of not taking anything personally, because I think there is some kind of philosophical difference between the way Chinese people function as a group versus the way Western folks function as a world. I do think there is more of an erasure of selfness with Eastern culture, and more of like putting the group ahead of individual, like 集体大于个人, right? But I think what I've encountered in Western culture, there is a little shift towards the other side, in my opinion, in these years. And I really think it's a great thing with the devised theater pieces and the fact that it's becoming less and less director-centric in the way we create theater. But there's a lot of the remnants of listening to the boss, you know, or the individualism of one person being rather more important than the rest. And that does not apply to any one person. That kind of applies as a thinking pattern or an identity. So I think that is a very covert and insidious kind of culture shock that I didn't know I was going to experience. And I think there has been surprising relationship that's being generated from that. And then there has also been damages that's being done because of the way I interact with people differently than, say, a director who was born here. I hope that makes sense somehow.
Thank you, Sarah. And what you have said is, yeah, you're really good in like sharing all these ideas you have, because I feel it's not only about experience and memories, you also created something out of that. Yeah, and I kind of want to add on one more question, is like based on what I've discussed. So in your time working with an institution, so mostly like white run institution, because I can say that most of the gatekeepers in American theater is still like white people, and artistic directors I think I learned the research is like 90% of the artistic directors in American theaters are still like white people. So have you ever have a moment that you really want to change something about it? Like no matter it's about the institution or the system or about yourself. Yeah, is there a moment you have a strong awareness of that?
There are so many moments. But then also I think there's something common about these moments. Something I've been contemplating on is we all know the term male gaze, and I'm thinking about if there's a term called this is by no means to stir up any anger or conflict, but it just reflects the process on. There's a term called Western gaze that's being put in different kinds of white-run institutions in relation to the EDI awareness, equity, diversity, inclusion, and also coming from other culture side, the internalized Western gaze. I feel something about, like, I share those moments Chongren and Xiaran shared about culture shock in the other ways. And I feel my personal experience is also, I think, Chinese theater or Chinese theater process has its own a relationship to representation. And that's in the creative process, and also in like the kinds of works that we see in relation to representation of characters, relationships, and cultural representation. And I think it's a process that we are all learning about it, and we're finding our own ways to dissect it and transform it. But I think a lot of things being specifically for white run producing institution and presenting institution, when they try to present some works that allegedly it's a representation of a certain height of Chinese theater, I think there's a context that's being missed, the context of translating the work within its original context. So I feel another question about this is, so then what is good Chinese theater in American, according to American white-run institution? Because the language to assess theater and also the experience of performance here and its relation to the cultural and political core is very different from other cultures' taste and need. So I feel I had this conversation with some of my, like, the avant-garde theater artists in China who I really, really admire. And this common question has come up again and again and again is a lot of them are hesitate to come to US to present their works, and Europe is more a popular place. This is more of a producing question, but then what is the gap? What is the bridge that could possibly bridge these gaps of a certain scene of Chinese work is being missing, being absent here? Has anything to do with the need of, like, justify the diversity that right now it's something I don't know how to further articulate, but in the need of meeting diversity requirement in all these institutions, is there really, like, what are some real support to support aesthetics and work diversity from China and also so many other cultures.
I just want to say I totally agree with you, because the first at the first time I want to create and start this festival is actually because I feel the gap between the American theater and Chinese theater. It was very interesting because so I started to get into theater back in China, and I did not a lot, but some theater works and jobs in China. And then I came here and I realized I didn't really know a lot of American theater, of American plays back in China, because most of the Western play I did or I learned about is European, Eurocentric plays. It's not American modern plays. That was a big surprise to me, actually, because in my mind, I think like Western culture in general, in a lot of Chinese people's mind, it should be American. But when you start to think more deeply about it, and actually there's not a lot of American plays in China, or not a lot of Chinese play in America. So then during the quarantine, I think maybe the cyberspace, the virtual theater can be a way to open the door to both sides of the audience, because I can feel the hatred not only in I think not only in the US, but in both of the country, it's raising up. So, and that I think all of this is due to the ignorance, and also there's no way for the people in America and China to know each other. People cannot really see each other's work, and which so I initially just wanted to start a platform, and people in China, all the artists in China can perform their pieces online, and people here can also know there's works that people in China, they're also doing it, and maybe it's something they have never think about. Because I totally agree. I always feel the stereotype based expectation from the institutions to me, or to me as a Chinese originally from China artist. Yeah, so I really appreciate your sharing about your thoughts and experience in this American institutions. I think, yes, so we have interactive, more fun game. So it's about our ideal life as an artist who is originally from China, but now based in America, or in the future also based in America. So I wanted everyone to take out a piece of paper and a pen, a pencil, or your phone anyway, that draw something to make a cocktail of your ideal artist life. This is my very poor drawing, but you can make a cocktail. I think that's more like what we wanted to taste. So how much of different things you want to pour into this bottle, such as reality and maybe theater making and relationships with the family, with a partner, with your pet, or anything you think is worth to pour into this bottle. And yeah, I think it's just a very interesting and easier way that we can share visually what we want in our life. Maybe we don't really have it now, but it's something we expect to have in our life. Yeah, don't worry about the drawing, because I feel none of you will be worse than me. So If you're ready, you can just maybe show it in front of the screen whenever you're ready.
Can I explain it?
Yes, definitely. I like to hear every one of you to explain it. Because like my poor drawing, if I don't say it, people will never understand what I'm drawing. And also I know, yeah, well, you are doing this creative work, and I'm just want to say, like, it's very interested. I'm really interested that all of you are doing interdisciplinary works. I think this is very unique because, as I know, most of the theater people actually are more focusing maybe very simply in one direction. It doesn't really mean like only playwriting or directing, because I feel theater people have to do a lot of things like design and sometimes directing and also writing. But also I think because Xiaoran has been doing graphic design and it's very professional, and also all the design is, I can also feel a theater maker spirit in the design somehow. Yeah, and also I know Xiao Yue is also a photographer and doing a lot of photography. Yeah, it's just my research. I'm just like sharing informations and interesting observations with our audience about all of you guys. Yeah, so after like I research your website and everything I can find, yeah, I just feel like personally, I think all of you share a very special personality as an artist, and also different skills and talents in different genres and disciplines of art. It's a very interesting phenomena actually to me.
Can I say something? And possibly is a question that, because I don't know if the rest of you feel this way as well. But so being on an O1 visa means I can't work outside of my discipline, right? And I feel like because of that, a lot of us end up working and putting on a lot of hats, not because we genuinely love to do so many things. Because to be honest, every time people like say stuff like how productive I am, I feel more of a sense of pressure than pride, because it's, yeah, I would love to go traveling or go get brunches every weekend as opposed to working on 3 projects at once. But because we don't get paid very well in the industry and we have to kind of get groceries, that's just the reality of things. But it's also very rewarding. Like, I'm not complaining about doing work at all.
I'm just really glad you bring this up. Yeah, because I didn't really include this question in it because I'm not sure like what is the situation every one of you is facing, because it might be different. Yeah, so but I totally agree with Ran, because like the O1 visa, all of us originally from China or other countries, we have to obtain. We have to, maybe American people or American theater artists will never understand what we are experiencing. Sometimes I feel the same way because I'm also struggling with a visa problem. Yeah, so I think I'm just really want to do something I really like. It's a very, very simple thing to me. I also explained that to my family because I said, if I'm, sometimes I imagine, because they will talk to me, they're back in China. So they said, why are you coming back to China? And I will say that I just really want to do a simple thing and I can get more freedom to do it here. I don't really hate creating arts in China or Chinese artists, but that's a truth that I can have more freedom to decide what I want to do here. But also there's a burden here too. Like Ran just said, it's you just want to do a simple thing, but you have to struggling with your visa. That sounds so ridiculous to me. And you have to make so much effort to obtain it, to tell people you are to branding yourself in a way, actually, to obtaining the O1 visa. So in a way, I think we're just experiencing a lot more than not only American theater artists, but also because I did applying for the O1 visa as well. And even I think Chinese artists have a more strict standard to get it than any other country's artist. Yeah, which is a very strong pressure and very big burden to our creativity and our life here. So that's, I will ask you about your cocktail, because I kind of want to see how do you want to make a living in that part. Oh my God, John, you're so professional. Wow. Do you want to share your cocktail first? Yes, we can see it. Yeah.
Okay, so I made a mason jar because I live in Brooklyn. So the shell of the jar is family and other relationships. And I'm putting it on top of a coffee. Can't live without it. And it consists of, oh my God, playwriting in the foundation, directing in the torso region, and sound design on top. And then there are a few sprigs of thingies on top of there, which is traveling, long walks. I like walk to Trader Joe's once a month to get a bottle of wine, and baking. I have a theory about how directors would prefer baking to cooking, and that's a different conversation. You can come to my TED Talk. That's
I'd
it.
love to. Thank you. This is such a great drawing, actually. It's a beautiful artwork. And I just really love you put coffee at the bottom and baking on the top of it. It's like you close it and it's something you want to drink and eat. And inside is like the spiritual inspirations and ideas and creative works you want to do. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that cocktail. It's so interesting. It's so fascinating. And who's next? I cannot wait to see it. Oh, hold on for a second. I have a question to you. Which part do you think is the part to support your life financially?
Sorry, could you
Yes,
repeat
yes.
that question?
Oh, I think oh, sorry, I'm turning on the wrong view.
I think it
Yeah.
was just my, it was a glitch.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the question is for Ran because I was seeing your image.
Oh, I
Yeah.
would make a living as a director / baker. I can't.
Okay.
I can't
Yeah.
be a baker right now, but if I ever end up having a green card or something, that would be a pretty nice job, a career goal.
Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you. Yeah, I like to see your cocktail.
Oh, not a problem. I was actually just asking that question. Hold on. I have one more box, one more layer to add. Maybe I can go next.
Yes. So, Chongren and Mihao, do you want to go first? Which one of you? It's a competition. Maybe Minhao, do you want to share your cocktail first?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of simple, very simple, and I kind of separated it into
Do you want to show us it? Show us your drawing.
practicality and relationships in life and art making. And I've always struggled in some it may be a good struggle, but I've always found it hard to like really separate like relationships in life, which is very important to me, and also like your theater, your art, and I feel like those two. I think sometimes like that kind of creates a lot of stress because it kind of your art bleeds into your life, and then you can never stop worrying about your art. But also I feel like it's like on the healthy side, like the two informing each other, and so that's why so I kind of just did like
Wow.
just in this practicality of life, but then in the center I think I have my relationships and my and art.
I think it's very interesting you bring such an interesting picture you draw, because I kind of feel, especially for theater makers, because we are not working in the regular working time. Yeah, I have to say that we are not living as what normal people, Turin just mentioned, a life like that. Yeah, because the working hours is different and how we do it is different. So it will be hard for us to separate our life and art making. Yeah, but we have to manage it. It's hard. And Chongren and Xiaoyue, who want maybe Xiaoyue, I think you are preparing for it.
I am ready. So can you see, this is my cocktail. There's a lot of things. So they're not in order, and I put a stirring thing here, so so they will always be in a mix. A flight ticket to anywhere at any time. Is my screen mirrored? I'm not sure, but
no, we can see it. It's just a little bit blurry, but you can explain it. We know where it is. Yeah. Oh, we can see it now.
First layer, a flight ticket to anywhere, anytime. This has always been my dream, and especially after this year of not being able to travel anywhere. And then tender, loving care from, and then also for my loved ones, family, and friends. I think this will just always be the core of being a human. And then uninterrupted time for long duration process. This is something I would always dream for my career, is being able to have a few months or even a year long time, not having to worry about financial struggles or security, and just being allowed to breathe in the process. I'm always a fan for long process. And then this is going back to, this was inspired by what Xiaoran was sharing about the reality of being here on a visa. A job that engages me with human contact, is this year I've been longing for, like at least in my childhood time, those small buses that travels in between cities and towns, they have someone on the bus selling ticket. I just felt that has been my dream job this entire year, to do something has nothing to do with art, nothing to do with like, trying to get the visa in as an artist in theater. I want to do something that really just can make me be in contact with human. And then this is like a mixture of a lot of things. Food from my childhood hometown, from mom and grandma, and then Chinese medicine. Also unapologetically connecting with my ancestry is something I strive for. And then the bottom layer is body. Body as yes. Body is my body and also my family's body, and also body as us grounding ourselves in this universe. Body in terms of health, in terms of our awareness to body and body's relation to the universe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Ran really, like Xiaoyi really approved that Ran's theory of directors love baking. Yeah, and I'm not a baker, so I'd like to eat what your bakery offered. Yeah, and Chongren.
Yeah, so well, like my drawing probably is worse than Tending's. I made it like, sort of like the pretty straightforward. The bottom 30% is relationships and family. That has always been the core and the foundation of like my existence, I think. And the next level is food and travel. I think a lot of you guys talked about it, and I'm not a baker. Like I cook a lot of dishes. I like to the know of like what put into it and what coming out of it. And of course, like I do love. I think like being a person in this world, traveling to different places make you understand other people better, and then it makes you a better person. Because like there are a lot of different people out there that is completely different from, and have a completely different experience, speak different language, and they think differently. This is very important to me. And then like, above that is my artistic work. I only put like 25%. Recently I've been like, a lot of my friends starting, I don't have a therapist, but like, I have a lot of personal, like, I have like, I feel like I need to take care of myself more. So like, and I put in only 25%. And I think like, it actually makes me more productive that way. And another part of the big artistic work is, I want to say like, when, in fact, a lot of the artistic directors in the United States are like, for Yanzi, we are small enough. So like, I'm still doing a lot of hands-on programming work. But for a lot of the big institutions, artistic directors are not in charge of artistic side. They are the fundraisers. So like, you have to understand that's why majority of them are white, old white men, because they can talk to people, get the money. I mean, it's a much different world compared to like, this running a smaller company and you're very hands-on. And because I know a lot of the artists are struggling out there, like, a big part of me in the next couple of years is really trying to figure out how to get more money and pay our artists better. Like, I always pay people, like, the more, the more we get, the more I can offer. And that's very important to me. That's like a big part of my goal. And then on top of it, I want to leave 20%, 25% empty. Because I feel like, I always don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. Weirdly, I start drawing this bottle. I started like, from the top. I realized, I actually put a top on it and it looks like a cocktail shaker. And I realized, because like, we put in all those ingredients and you always shake it up together. So it's not really, that much like this percentage, that percentage. And also like, I think like I'm not really an astrology person, but I but I'm Aquarius, and I always feel like there's something like up here. I always put it like, you have to like go dig deep into it, and then you see like, what I've been thinking. I'm trying to understand myself better, like, and through the work we do and through these kind of opportunities to meet people. Yeah, that's it.
It is such an interesting activity, actually. I've never done this before, but it was so great to see a lot of personal, very intimate part of every one of you. Yeah, and I really admire the responsibility Chongren shared to pay artists and theater makers better, because I believe all of us, or theater makers in the whole world, most of the theater makers are not getting paid very generously or even correctly in a way, because we have done so much work. And so there have to be people who have to take the responsibility to try to make theater makers' life better. Yeah, but it's a big question, and it's a long journey to go. Yeah, but I'm really happy Chongren bring this up to everyone in front of a screen who is watching it too. Yeah, so I think it's already 8:50, and I do have a lot of more questions. Some of them I prepared, and some of them is just come from our discussions and all the things you're sharing. But I think the theaters or everything in the US, in New York, is opening soon. So I'm really looking forward to meet every one of you in person, and maybe we can have a baker director, cooking director club in person, in reality. Yeah, so I'm just really appreciate every one of you attending this opening panel for Bound 2021. And also there's more like 8 shows will go online, one after another, on YouTube, Twitch, in the overseas platforms, and Bilibili, and Xinlang Xinwen, and what's the other one? 大麦喜剧, like some 3 main primary platforms back in China. And all the shows will be both in Chinese and English subtitles, and some of them, the language is Chinese, and some of them are in English. So we'll share more information on our website and our social media, Insta and Facebook, and also the Chinese WeChat. So yeah, I also wanted to invite all of you to come to see it online. Thank you, everyone, and hope to meet every one of you in person. Have a good night.
Thank you.